So late last night, Donald Trump went on a rampage and announced that all trade negotiations with Canada were hereby terminated. And he said the reason he was terminating trade negotiations with Canada, he claimed, is because of an ad campaign that Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, was running in the United States. Trump called it a $75,000 ad campaign. It's actually a $75 million ad campaign where the province of Ontario basically uses the words of Ronald Reagan, who despised tariffs except in the most extreme of extreme circumstances, and Ronald Reagan, who talked about the importance of free trade and how tariffs lead countries into depressions. And so Reagan's words were used in this ad that was blasted into all of the states in the United States to tell Americans that Donald Trump's trade war is crushing the American economy. And Doug Ford said it was important to educate Americans using Ronald Reagan's voice to also appeal to potentially rational-minded Republicans to the extent any exist. It's basically word for word Ronald Reagan's words in this ad. I'm going to show that to you in a moment. But let me show you what Donald Trump posted about that ad campaign. And this is why Donald Trump said that he was terminating all trade discussions with Canada. The reality is Trump's looking for any pretext to attack Canada. He always has, because he wants to take away Canada's sovereignty and invade it and make it the 51st state. That's what we've always been saying here on the MeidasTouch network. It's what we've always been saying on Meidas Canada, which is run by Charlie Angus. It's what he's always been saying on the Resistance Tour. Let's take a look right here at what Donald Trump posted late last night. He goes, "The Ronald Reagan Foundation has just announced that Canada has fraudulently used an advertisement which is fake, featuring Ronald Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs. The ad was for $75,000. They only did this to interfere with the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court and other courts. Tariffs are very important to the national security and economy of the USA," Trump puts that all in caps, "based on their egregious behavior. All trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT." Let's go through a few things together, though. The ad is not fraudulent. It's word for word Ronald Reagan's voice. I'm going to show you what Ronald Reagan said in a moment. You should note as well that the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute is now run by a Trumper, somebody named David Trulio. The entire Reagan Foundation is captured by MAGA. This individual who runs the Reagan Foundation was in the first Trump administration. He was the Export-Import Bank of the United States counselor to the chairman and senior vice president from the program on China and transformational exports. He worked in the prior Trump administration as well for the Office of Secretary of Defense, 2018 to 2020, and he was also the managing editor and head of strategy and editorial operations at state regime media known as Fox from 2021 to 2023. So that's who's running the Reagan Presidential Foundation. It's not like some of these foundations who's like led by like the family members anymore. It's basically been captured by MAGA, as I think you can see there. So let's deal with that. Let's talk about what the Reagan statement said. I want to break this all down for you with logic, with reason, with receipts, with evidence, okay? Because Donald Trump's saying he's terminating trade relations based on this. Let's go on and read what the statement is from the Reagan Foundation. So Dan Scavino, who's Donald Trump's like digital guy and like deputy chief of staff, like he's everything to Donald Trump. He goes, "Oh, Canada is running a $75 million anti-tariff propaganda ad on TV here in the United States of America, directed at Republican voters." And here's the statement from the Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute, run by MAGA now, captured by MAGA. It says, "The Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute learned that the government of Ontario, Canada, created an ad campaign using selective audio and video of President Ronald Reagan delivering his radio address to the nation on free and fair trade, dated April 25th, 1987. The ad misrepresents the presidential radio address and the government of Ontario did not seek nor receive permission to use and edit the remarks. The Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute is reviewing its legal options in this matter. We encourage you to watch President Reagan's unedited video on our YouTube channel. I actually encourage you to watch it too, because it is actually far more anti-tariff and far more free trade than even could be fit into this, 1 minute or so commercial that the province of Ontario is running in the United States. I mean, it eviscerates the concept of tariffs, and it does say, look, in extreme circumstances, you may need it, but it's got to be just for the shortest period of time. It cannot be used as a trade war. It literally says we should not do trade wars. Free trade is vital. And it says tariffs were the reason for the Great Depression. It talked about Smoot-Hawley and how the Great Depression was caused by tariffs. The speech is an apotheosis against tariffs and for free trade. Like, it couldn't be more anti-tariff. Also, it should be noted that Donald Trump said that the ad was for $75,000. It was for $75 million. You may have actually seen the ad run during the American League Championship game, where, coincidentally, the Toronto Blue Jays ended up winning that. Then they're in the World Series with the Los Angeles Dodgers. But one of the ads ran there, and it's been running across the United States. Now, as it relates to the issue of permission and consent and restrictions, because, right, the statement said it was run without authorization. Well, if you go to the YouTube channel, which I did, and you read the permissions and authorizations, let's look at it. The title, President Reagan's radio address to the nation on free and fair trade from Camp David, Maryland, on April 25th, 1987. You see it right here. Production date, April 25th, 1987. Access restrictions, unrestricted. Use restrictions, unrestricted. It just tells you credit the Ronald Reagan Library and the Reagan Foundation, which they do in that ad and which I'm doing right here. But it says restrictions, unrestricted, and use restrictions, unrestricted. So there was no restrictions on it being used for that purpose, because I think originally, before the Reagan Library was captured by MAGA, they wanted his speeches out, especially a speech like this, which was on Reagan's main point, free trade, anti-tariff. So what are you trying to say? That Reagan loved tariffs? I mean, what's the premise? Are you going to sue Canada? Is the point of this? Not only are you cutting off trade negotiations with Canada because they accurately represented and probably understated Reagan's hatred of tariffs, but you're going to sue Doug Ford. You're going to go sue the province of Ontario, sue Doug Ford. That's what you're going to do? He'll just play the tape, the full tape, which is even worse for you than the snippet that's on the commercial. So let me show you, okay? And listen to what Donald Trump said again over here. He goes, it's a fake. Trump says it's a fake Reagan, that it's not real. So I went to the YouTube site. Let me play you the main portion of it. And this is Reagan saying it. I went to the YouTube site that they told me to go to. And here's Reagan's radio address on free and fair trade on April 25th, 1987. Listen to it yourself. Here, play this clip.
Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. Now, there are sound historical reasons for this. For those of us who lived through the Great Depression, the memory of the suffering it caused is deep and searing. And today, many economic analysts and historians argue that high tariff legislation passed back in that period, called the Smoot-Hawley tariff, greatly deepened the Depression and prevented economic recovery. You see, at first, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on, something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. The memory of all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity. Now, it hasn't always been easy. There are those in the Congress, just as there were back in the 30s, who want to go for the quick political advantage, who risk America's prosperity for the sake of a short-term appeal to some special interest group, who forget that more than 5 million American jobs are directly tied to the foreign export business, and additional millions are tied to imports. Well, I've never forgotten those jobs, and on trade issues, by and large, we've done well.
Okay, now, you heard that. Now I'll show you the commercial that the province of Ontario's running. It's a $75 million ad campaign here in the United States. Let's play it.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
And I could show you dozens of other Ronald Reagan clips where he talks about free trade. I'll just show you one other one right here. Here's another clip of Reagan. This one's from 1988 and very much real. Here, play this clip.
Our peaceful trading partners are not our enemies. They are our allies. We should beware of the demagogues who are ready to declare a trade war against our friends, weakening our economy, our national security, and the entire free world, all while cynically waving the American flag. The expansion of the international economy is not a foreign invasion. It is an American triumph, one we worked hard to achieve, and something central to our vision of a peaceful and prosperous world of freedom.
Now, MeidasTouch has been covering this story now for weeks. You know that, right? Like, I've been reporting on this ad for a while. Premier Ford of Ontario said back on October 14, 2025, in a speech at the Empire Club. Remember, I covered it in real time because I knew it was a big deal. He said, here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. Listen to Premier Doug Ford in his own words. Here, play this clip so you can hear it for yourself.
Let's take Ronald Reagan's words and let's blast it to the American people. And our first launch is going to be on every major network. Maybe one may not get it, and we'll talk about that at a later date. No, it's actually CNN, to be honest with you. They're a little nervous, but Fox and other people, but we're going to launch a $75 million ad, and we're going to repeat that message to every Republican district there is, right across the entire country. And we're just gonna speak the truth. But you know, that ad, it's not a nasty ad. It's actually just very factual, and coming from a person like Ronald Reagan, every Republican is going to identify that voice. Maybe the younger Republicans can't remember, but he was just the best president the country's ever seen, in my opinion. In fact, factory employment in America is at the lowest level it's been in 5 years. This next one is staggering. The Center for Automotive Research in the U.S. says that President Trump's tariffs on autos will raise the costs for American automakers by nearly $108 billion US in 2025. These kinds of enormous costs on businesses result in two outcomes: higher prices for American consumers and fewer jobs for American workers and inflation on the backs of American workers.
And just to show you quickly here, like that Reagan presidential library, they're like reposting Eric Trump and Elon Musk. Eric Trump on how Elon Musk saved free speech when he bought Twitter. Like, don't play the video, but like that's the type of stuff that they repost on the Reagan Foundation. Now it's sad for the legacy of I'm no Reagan fan generally. I liked his library. I like his positions generally on when it comes to against tariffs. I don't like tariffs. So there's that. But that's the type of content that's being posted on that Reagan X account and social media. Like Eric Trump said this. Okay, just wanted to show you that. Now, I'll show you this as well from my coverage this week. Prime Minister Carney gave that great speech at a Canadian university in Ottawa, university there. And he said, the relationship with America is done. The ever closer economic relationship is over. Here, play this clip.
Our strategy will recognize that in today's global economy, we have to build sustainably. It's not just a moral duty, it's also an economic imperative. It is a moral duty, but it's an economic imperative. Now, above all, we will build Canadian. The new security threats the world is bringing to our shores means we're making the biggest investments in our military in generations. But up until now, more than 70 cents of every dollar of military spending, military capital expending by our government goes to the United States. With our new Defense Investment Agency, we will make sure we build more of our security and defense capabilities here at home, creating new careers in aerospace and shipbuilding and cyber and AI for Canadian engineers, technicians, and scientists. It's the same thing in steel. Consider that, well, 80% of the steel that Europe buys is manufactured in Europe. 75% of the steel that the U.S. buys is manufactured in the U.S. Only 40% of the steel that we use is made here. That doesn't make sense. Not when we have the people, the resources, and the companies to build right here in Canada. So our upcoming budget will move forward with our Buy Canadian policy, prioritizing Canadian steel, aluminum, lumber, manufactured good, and technology for Canadian projects. And with new orders for homes, infrastructure, and defense equipment becoming orders for Canadian suppliers. We will be our own best customer. So the welder who's working on a contract in St. John's can get a full-time job.
And then Carney talked about how we must build Canadian, and with the security threats, we can't rely on the U.S. anymore. Here, play this clip.
So because of these advantages, over decades, our economy grew steadily more integrated with the United States through the Free Trade Agreement of the 1980s, the NAFTA Accord of the 1990s, and eventually USMCA agreement signed in 2018. Canada's trade increased by over 400% during that period, and our economy doubled in size. But this process, this decades-long process of an ever closer economic relationship with the United States, is now over. And as a consequence, many of our former strengths as a country, former strengths more particularly as our economy, strengths based on close ties to America, have become our vulnerabilities. And as a result of that, the jobs of workers in our industries most affected by the U.S. tariffs in autos and steel and lumber are under threat. And our businesses are holding back investments restrained by the pall of uncertainty that's hanging over all of us. Our relationship with the United States will never again be the same as it was, even though in this new world of protectionism, we have the best trade deal of any other country, and we're working to make it even better still. Now, at the same time that all of this is happening, technology is changing the way we work, live, and communicate. When I was in graduate school, the World Wide Web, as we then called it, was that was the modern term of the information superhighway, if you ever heard of that. The World Wide Web, as we then called it, was just beginning. We used pen and paper in class We talked on the telephone to each other. And we talked about the same news stories, the same movies, the same bands. My generation was connected by wires, yours is connected by code, and yet our society today is becoming ever more disconnected. Our public square is fragmented by online echo chambers, where truth and fiction can be hard to tell apart, and where contrasting ideas tend to polarize, not persuade. Now, in the context of all this, as Canadians, we have relearned some key lessons over the course of the past year. First, we have to take care of ourselves because we can't rely on one foreign partner. We have to take care of each other because we are stronger together. And we've learned that now is not the time to be cautious because fortune favors the bold.
That was this week as well. And he's right. I mean, Donald Trump would look for some pretext to go after Canada no matter what. It's the ad campaign. It's you looked at me funny, or you said this, or you said that. Remember what he said? What was it 2 months ago or so? Canada recognizing a free Palestine. That's what it was, right? Canada recognized a free Palestine. So Donald Trump's like, I guess we can't do trade deals if you recognize a free Palestine. It's like, okay, you're just going to start making up things no matter what it is to hate on Canada because ultimately you want it to be the 51st state. We have to go into it clear-eyed. Trump wants to conquer Canada. He wants to take away Canada's sovereignty. He wants to bury Canada. And he's pissed that Prime Minister Carney, the central banker, is smart and sophisticated and is outmaneuvering him right now as well. So Trump's looking for, like a wedge issue, pit Doug Ford against Carney. That's part of it as well, because Doug Ford, Conservative Party, but provincial level, Mark Carney, Liberal Party, federal level. And then you had former NDP member of parliament who runs Midas Canada, Charlie Angus. And he's called all of this. He knew all of this was going down. Like here he is on July 13th, 2025, when Trump tried to pull one of these stunts back then. Here, play this clip.
Well, I mean, is anyone surprised that Trump was going to pull this? You know, he declared he was going to have 90 trade deals in 90 days. That bombed. He said that he would have a trade deal with Canada on July 21st, and yet he attacked us. He pulled away from the table. The Prime Minister agreed to drop the digital sales tax, which I think cost the Prime Minister a lot of trust in Canada. They were like, why'd you do that? And the Prime Minister tries to present a vision of saying, you know, I'm reasonable. We're going to work with this guy. The Prime Minister didn't respond when Trump threw arbitrary 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum. The Prime Minister said, we're not negotiating in public and by Twitter. We're going to sit down at the table. And then Donald Trump pulls this stunt. So what's very clear, and I think the Prime Minister had to go through this to really get the strength he's going to need now, is that you don't sit down and negotiate with a gangster regime in good faith. You just can't trust Trump. And the one thing we know about Trump is he's never veered off his intention of destroying our nation by destroying our economy. He's made that clear. He's come back at us again and again. He's wavered on so many other nations, but Canada has remained his focus, his enemy, the nastiest people, he says. We see the rising rhetoric coming from Kristi Noem and Kash Patel and the other mega thugs that he has that are blaming Canada for all manner of falsehoods and lies. So this is a moment of decision for Canada to stand up in the face of this kind of threat or roll over. And we are not going to roll over.
And here he was as well on July 5th. 2025, saying Canadians need to be really ready for what's about to happen. Play this clip.
But this is a very, very sick and dark exhibition. So when we look at this as the people that we're negotiating with, Canadians need to be really ready. We are upping our investment in military spending significantly. We are now procuring from the Europeans, whereas before we would have just gone to the United States as per usual and buy gear. We're not buying gear from the United States. I don't know what the Prime Minister's thinking, but if I was him, I'd be inviting over Ukrainians to start setting up factories so that we can set up those $100 drones, because it's our border, it's our waterways, our lakes, and our harbors that are now seriously under threat because we don't know where Trump is going to go. I know in the media in Canada, they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to act like they're being hysterical. But when you're seeing a president of the United States setting up concentration camps and bragging about people being eaten by alligators, people whose only crime is they got picked up by ICE, then the idea that we can trust them at our border is simply not on. We have to start getting ourselves ready for what could be the next part of the playbook.
And then finally, I'll just remind you that a few days back, Donald Trump was starting to talk about this ad. That's when I did my report on the ad. And I was telling everybody he's obsessed with that ad. That ad's getting in his head right there. Here's what he said when he called out the ad. He goes, Canada's taking out ads. Here, play this clip.
We're the most successful. We're believers in tariffs. And I even see foreign countries now that we are doing very well with taking ads. Don't go with tariffs. They're taking ads. I saw an ad last night from Canada. If I was Canada, I'd take that same ad also. But they're actually on television taking ads. But I do believe that everybody's too smart for that. We have a very, very big and important case coming up. We should win the case based on the legal merit.
So I played for you the Reagan video. Trump is saying that that's fake. Now, I think this is going to backfire in Donald Trump's face. It's obviously not fake. And I think it brings more attention now to Ronald Reagan's words. And Ronald Reagan, you heard for yourself, he hated tariffs. Absolutely. Now, I want to be fair too. There's a long, I'm not going to play the full speech. Go watch the full speech if you want to watch the full speech as well. It doesn't get much better. What he does say, Reagan, is that he was putting temporary tariffs in place on Japan for a very short period of time. He goes, we're not to do a trade war. He said extraordinary circumstances, but he said, I've conveyed that these tariffs are bad. They're devastating in the long run, and we need to make sure we get out of tariffs. Tariffs equal very bad. We need free trade and no tariffs throughout the world. That's the whole point of the speech that he gave. You can watch the full thing. Watch any of Reagan's speeches. He hates tariffs. That's like one of his main things. He hates tariffs and he's a free trader. By the way, NAFTA, which Donald Trump redid, North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, meaning no tariff. The point of NAFTA is free trade with Canada and Mexico, which Trump then did USMCA, United States, Mexico, Canada Agreement, which was basically NAFTA with a few tweaks. But it's a free trade agreement, meaning anti-tariffs. Your own deal, Donald, USMCA, is an anti-tariff deal with Canada. That's the whole point of the U.S. that you did in 2018, where you basically just renamed NAFTA. There you have it. We lay out all the facts here on the MeidasTouch Network. That's the receipts. That's the evidence. Judge for yourself. But let's be rooted in reality. Let's be rooted in the truth. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million. Thanks for watching.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.